Hey, what's going on, guys? Louis with Garage Game Day Sports. We're back. The Garage Game Day Sports podcast is back. We're talking our second half of our college football week one predictions. We touched up a couple of days ago on Boise State, Washington, Colorado, TCU, and the two Thursday night games. Today we're talking North Carolina, South Alabama making a trip to New Orleans to take on Tulane, LSU, Florida State Sunday night, and Clemson, Duke Monday night. But if you haven't, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Drop us a like, drop us a comment. Let us know what you think of the show. We appreciate any and all feedback. It helps us grow and helps provide our channel exposure, much needed exposure. We hope to continue to grow our channel. And now we're also available not just on Spotify, not just on Apple, but we're also available on Google, Amazon Music, and now iHeartRadio as of this week. So feel free, pop us in the car, check us out, give us a listen. So I want to start chronologically. We'll start with the Saturday afternoon games. We're talking North Carolina, South Carolina, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. That's my time. North Carolina, 2.5-point favorite. Over under right now set at 64.5. I'll tell you right now, I'm looking more at the over under to this game than an actual winner. I'm going to pick my winner like I always do, but as far as my locks is going to be the over under in this game. But of course, you got two very talented quarterbacks, Drake May, Spencer Rattler. You have the success May enjoyed last year as a freshman. Spencer Rattler, of course, started at Oklahoma, had a pretty good year last year with South Carolina. You had North Carolina that started 9-1 last year, but then really fell off a cliff to end the year. You lost to Georgia Tech. You got blown out by Clemson in the ACC title game. You lost a close one to Oregon in the bowl game. But I really like this Tar Heel offense. They can score points, but of course, the big concern is on the defensive side of the ball. Had a lot of trouble tackling. Gave up a lot of big plays, a lot of points. We remember that crazy track meet game with Appalachian State last year. Gave up a ton to Clemson. Had 45 dropped on them by Notre Dame, so that defense does need a lot of work. And you pick up a couple of transfers. We still don't know the status as of this airing. I hadn't heard of anything as far as Tez Walker, the transfer, if he's going to be able to play with the situation he's got going on. But for South Carolina, you bring back Juice Wells. They're going to have North Carolina's going to have a lot of problems taking him down. We know North Carolina's defensive deficiencies, but you bring back a player the caliber of Juice Wells, those yards after catch, man. He can get behind the defense, or if he stays in front of them, the majority of his yards were after the catch last year. And I think he'll be a main target for Rattler in this game. They're going to target him. And I think he and the North Carolina defense, as well as the two quarterbacks, are going to be the reason I take the over 64.5 as one of my 6 locks. We did only 5 locks last week because we had a limited sample size as far as games concerned. We only had 7 games, so we did 5 locks. I went 2-3 in those locks, so we're going to try and be consistent every week. Keep track of our locks. My first lock of the week is the over 64.5. A lot of points in this game, and I've been back and forth. Mac Brown and Shane Beamer, 2 great coaches, 2 great quarterbacks. I think if it comes down to the last possession, which it could very well come down to, I like Drake May with a ball in his hands. I think he can make just enough plays to get Carolina over the top. I don't like them as far as ACC contenders. I think Clemson and Florida State are head and shoulders above the rest, but I think they're in that next tier, and I think they start off 2022 with a big win. Give me the Tar Heels 38-35. That would put your total, if I do the math right, that's 73, comfortably over the total of 64.5, my first lock of the week. Game number 2. South Alabama, the 10-win Jaguars, taking a trip to New Orleans to take on the 24th-ranked Tulane Green Wave. 8 o'clock kick. That's 7 o'clock Central. Tulane, 6-point favorite. It dipped a little. It was 6.5, I think, as of this morning, and it just creeped up to 6. That could be important if you're looking at a 6-point win, something like that. You're looking at a push now instead of an outright loss. If you were looking at Tulane, if you were taking Tulane's side there, over under at 52. The 10-win Jaguars team. The South Alabama looked really good last year. They bring back a ton of production. You bring back your quarterback. You bring back your wide receiver. You bring back a ton on both sides of the ball. Carter Bradley, LaDamian Webb are going to be two names you're going to hear a lot about in this game, the South Alabama offense. They played UCLA very tight last year. They lost to Troy by one possession. I think it was by 4 points to be exact. Did get blown out in the bowl game to Western Kentucky, but two of their three losses by 1 point and by 4 points respectively. So this team, Kane Womack has this team ready to play, ready to make another jump. They're in the Sun Belt, or as I like to call it, the Fun Belt. Because there's a lot of talented teams in that conference. You got Coastal, Troy, James Madison, App State, and now here with South Alabama. So this would be a big building block win for the Jaguars if they were to pull this off or even stay close, as it would be a good barometer to see, if they're going to be big players in the Sun Belt Conference. And I do like Tulane, the favorites in the American. I know you lost a few teams. UCF went to the Big 12. You bring in UTSA, though. UTSA makes the jump from CUSA, Conference USA, to the American Conference. I think that game between them down the line could very well determine who ends up the American champion. And they could very well rematch in the American Championship game the week after that. But going back to this game, Tulane, you bring back Michael Pratt, and that quarterback. You have a stout offensive line you're bringing back. 4 of your 5 starters come back. So you, of course, want that quarterback offensive line dynamic, that correlation to continue. You lose Tyjae Spears to the draft, though. Your running back. Accounted for a ton of yards, accounted for a ton of touchdowns, and you do lose a lot on defense. So you're going to have players step it up if you're going to want to continue to contend in the American and eventually for the New Year's Six Bowl. I think they flirt with the over-under, the 52. I'm not really touching that because I can see a lower scoring game and I can also see a higher scoring game. If Michael Pratt gets things going and Carter Bradley gets to sling in the rock and it kind of becomes a shootout, I can see it playing either way. So I'm not really touching the over-under in this game. But I do like Tulane. I liked them already at the 6.5, 7-point spread. Now that it's gone down to 6, I like it even more. I think Tulane wins 31-20. So I like Tulane just slightly by double digits. I think they're the more complete team right now. I like Willie Fritz as head coach. I like the fact that their offensive line is back. They came off the biggest win of their program's career, in their program history, beating USC in the Cotton Bowl. They started off strong last year. They beat Kansas State, remember, early on in the season. And a lot of people were saying, ooh, what an ugly loss for Kansas State. That's a bad loss. Turned out to be a really quality loss because Tulane was in the Cotton Bowl, won 12 games. So I think Tulane, because they've been here before, you have the more experienced head coach. You have the more experienced team that's had big wins. So give me Tulane. Give me Tulane by double digits. My second lock of the weekend, Tulane giving the 6 points. Now we go to Sunday night. We go to the big one, the main event of Labor Day weekend. Florida State, LSU, the 5th-ranked Tigers, the 8th-ranked Seminoles playing at Camping World Stadium in Orlando. We know what happened last year. We know the classic that happened between these two. LSU nearly came back and then missed the extra point. Florida State held on to a 24-23 victory. We know all the big players. We know the quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels for LSU. Jordan Travis for Florida State. We know Brian Kelly, Mike Norvell, the job they've done. Norvell, the job he's done with Florida State, and then Brian Kelly, the first year with LSU, the job he did with the Tigers, upsetting Alabama, getting into the SEC championship game. So I look at the totality of both offenses. You have, of course, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors for LSU, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, the transfer from Michigan State, coming to Florida State at wide receiver. You also bring in Jaheim Bell at tight end. The transfer from South Carolina, I think, will be a key player here. If they try to take away Wilson or Coleman, I think Jaheim Bell could play a very important role in this game. And then, of course, you got defensive playmakers all over the place. Harold Perkins for LSU, Jared Verse on the line for Florida State. If you're looking, now I know this is an extremely rare occurrence, but if you're looking to throw money, on a non-quarterback or non-offensive player to make a run at the Heisman, those two could be your two biggest bets here, Harold Perkins and Jared Verse. They're going to be game changers, game wreckers in this game. But you also have Mason Smith out for this game for the Tigers, serving a 1-game suspension. He was already coming back from injury anyway. Brian Kelly was saying there's a chance he may not have even played in this game, but he's getting suspended this game. So he's out. But I do like the pressure that LSU puts on opposing offenses. I love this front four, the defensive line. And Jordan Travis took a lot of sacks last year. He held on to the ball a lot of times. So I think if he's trying to get those downfield passes out to Travis, Coleman, Bell, and LSU's front four can get home, that can put a lot of pressure on Jordan Travis. Maybe you get a strip sack or two, a couple of sacks. And it also takes the pressure off of your banged up secondary. LSU's had some secondary issues. They're injured right now. You had some transfers coming in. So I think Florida State, I think at first it was advantage Florida State. That I thought had an early advantage because they're playing LSU early on in the season. But I've changed my tune because of the pressure the front four can bring and the fact Jordan Travis holds onto the ball. You know, I do like that matchup. It takes the pressure off the secondary if they're able to get pressure on Travis, force him to get the ball out of his hands early. I think LSU can do that. And my original pick was Florida State. But since we got a few days before this game kicks, I'm going to change my pick to LSU. I've got LSU 27-23, a very close game. This one, I'm staying away from both the over-under and the line. I don't think I even mentioned that. LSU is a two-point favorite. Over-under sit at 56.5. I'm right on the fence with both of those numbers, so I'm going to stay away. I'm not going to lock up either one of those. But for the game outright, I do like LSU 27-23 in the main event of Labor Day weekend. Now we're going to Labor Day, Monday night. The 9th-ranked Clemson Tigers taking on Duke, a Duke team that is returning a lot of production and enjoyed a lot of success under Mike Elko. They went 9-4 last year in the first season under Elko, ACC Coach of the Year. Big ups, big props. And then, of course, you still have Dabo Swinney for Clemson. You have Cade Klubnik as his first year as the guy, quarterback one. He took over DJU, in the bowl game. DJU, transferred to Oregon State. Let's see what he can do with the Beavs. But this is Cade Klubnik's team now. And you have Will Shipley at running back, all-purpose guy, can do it all. So I'm very interested to see that dynamic and how he helps Klubnik really, etch his way, into a full season as starter. And they got a test right out of the gate. They're going to Duke. Clemson's a 13-point favorite. Clemson minus 13, over-under set at 55.5. A Monday night kick, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. But Riley Leonard comes back for Duke. Dual-threat quarterback. Accounted for 33 touchdowns last season. 20 touchdowns passing, 13 touchdowns on the ground. Ran for a lot, too, over 600 yards. You bring back Jalen Calhoun, too. And they both headline all the production you're bringing back. So Duke, I believe, may headline or may top the ACC in terms of returning starters. So this is not your dad's and your grandpa's Duke team. These guys can ball now. They're no pushovers. Clemson still has a stout defensive line, though. I do like the D-line for Clemson. They return most of their production back, and then you still have one of the most talented linebacking duos in the country. So I do like that for Clemson. There are no divisions anymore in the ACC, by the way. So we could see a Clemson-Florida State ACC championship game. We could see, the teams from the Atlantic and the Coastal. You're not going to have those divisions. You're not going to have that split anymore. So you could have two teams from the same division play in the ACC title game. So I wanted to bring that up because I had forgotten about that myself. Looking at all things, it's still hard to bet against Clemson. It's hard to bet against the consistency of Dabo Swinney, what he can do with that Clemson offense, the Clemson defense. You have another season without Brent Venables, life without Venables, as he's in Oklahoma now. So I think the offense improves now that you have stability at the quarterback position with Klubnik. He's now your entrenched starter, and with Will Shipley leading the way. And I know they're playing in Duke, and I was tempted to go Duke with a 13, but until I see more consistency from Duke and their ability to hang with the top dogs in the ACC, I've got to go Clemson. I think they flirt with the line, but I've got to go Clemson. I say Tigers 35-21. That would put them just over the 13-point threshold. Another lock of mine. So those are the 4 games. So my 6-pack of locks, to go back to the locks. We already talked about Tulane minus 6.5, Clemson minus 13, and the UNC South Carolina over 64.5. I also like Coastal Carolina getting 14.5 against UCLA. You bring back Grayson McCall. I know he's got a new coach now. Tim Beck replaces Jamie Chadwell, who departed. And UCLA, you got a lot of new pieces. You got to replace DTR at quarterback, Zach Charbonnet at running back. So there could be some growing pains for UCLA. So in the meantime, I like Coastal Carolina to possibly be be a player in the Sun Belt and maybe even for the New Year's 6 G5 bowl bid. So give me the Chanticleers getting 14.5. And also, I'm calling this my Texas two-step. 2 bets for the same game. Boise State, Washington. I like Washington minus 14 over Boise. I just think too much offense there. And the defense, I don't know. I think they get enough to put pressure on Taylon Green and to force him into a little bit of mistakes. And then also the over 58.5. With those 2 high-powered offenses, I think this thing could get into the mid-60s, maybe even the 70s. So I like Boise State, Washington over 58.5, and Washington giving up the 2 touchdowns. So those are the second half of my week 1 college football picks and also my locks for the week. So that'll do it for this episode of the Garage Game Day Sports Podcast. Like I said, you could find us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, drop us a comment, like our video. It helps with our exposure, helps getting us out there. We're trying to make our name here in the sports world, if you will. And then also pop us in the car, in the shower, I don't know, on the TV, on Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are now there. So we are moving up in the world. My name is Louie. That'll do it for the Garage Game Day Sports Podcast for today. I will see you guys next time. Have a great college football weekend.